Hey guys, welcome back. This is the final part of my first set of videos for 2019. It's also my 29th birthday special, as I will be 29 on Saturday, March 2nd. Thought I'd end it all with the updates to my gaming table. Back in October, I managed to finish hooking up everything. I got the speakers that I needed. I got some another AV selector switch to hook up more of my AV cables up, and just another nice look at my systems here. You got there's my Retron 5, there's my SNES Classic, there's my PS3, there's my PS4 and PlayStation VR. There's my Sega Sports Edition Dreamcast, there's my Sega Saturn, there's my Genesis CDX with the Genesis 32X on top of it. Right below it is the Wii U. There's my GameCube sitting on top of my PlayStation 2, and of course there's my Nintendo 64 with the disc drive underneath. Very, very happy to have that. It's I still think about it, a lot of money and it's worth it. It's a lot of fun. I love playing it. I love playing that the F-Zero X expansion kit for it. In reality, the Nintendo 64 disc drive, that's like the only Japanese system that I have that is not a Sega system. So that's where I'm keeping my Japanese Dreamcast in this cardboard box below my 3D glasses. Underneath, that's where I keep all my accessories for my Mark III. But to end it off, I'm gonna... Last year I told you guys that, told the story of how I got into gaming. And considering that I'm someone who has a bachelor's in history and, having gaming be one of my favorite areas of history, I'm still trying to find a career with what I've with my bachelor's in history. I'm sure I can find one. Don't you worry, guys. I'm sure I can find one. Maybe maybe the next chapter of my life is just around the corner. We'll see. But one of the things I wanted to tell you, considering that last year I told you the story of how I got into gaming, I thought I'd tell you the story of how I got into video game history. It was about 15 years ago. It was spring of 2004. I was watching something on Game Show Network, which had, at the time, had been renamed GSN. It's now Game Show Network again. But at the time, GSN was airing this documentary called Video Game Invasion, The History of a Global Obsession, hosted by the legendary skateboarder Tony Hawk. And I remember watching it, and I wasn't taping it because I didn't even know about it. I tried, when I learned it was going to be on again, I tried taping it. I ended up taping something else on GSN. I was like, ugh. But before 2004 came to an end, I managed to get the documentary on DVD. I still have it, and upstairs. But that's what really inspired me to get into the history of video gaming. And there are a lot of reasons why I got into why I was so inspired to learn about video game history. For one, at the time, it was just like, wow, it's really fun to see how we got to this point, how we got from Willie Higginbotham's Tennis for Two way back in 1958 all the way to what we have now. It's just incredible. Another reason, and it's very obvious, it's the history of something that I enjoy doing. But the third reason is, but then there's a third reason. Sure, history of anything, it's full of stuff that not everyone would know, but I've taken a special liking to gaming history because it's the history of an industry that it's one of the biggest industries out there today, and it's a big deal. Whenever Nintendo or Sony or Microsoft comes out, announces a brand new system, there's a lot of hype over it. But it's just so full of stuff that a lot of people who are gamers, there are a lot of things that there's just a lot of things in gaming history that I would tell people this stuff, and it's true, and they're looking at me like, you're crazy. There's no way that's true, and I tell them it is, and I can explain to you how. For example, I've told a lot of people at the place I work at, I says to them, when do you think Nintendo, the company, was founded? Now, more often than not, a lot of people would say the 80s, and I tell them, well, you're right. And I just tell them, and they would say 1982, 1985, and I says, well, 1985 was when they came out with the NES, but that's not when they were established. And then I would go on to tell them, it's just kind of a game I enjoy playing with them. And I finally tell them, you have the right decade, but you have the wrong century. Nintendo was founded way, way back on September 23rd, 1889. So yes, September 23rd of this year, as my favorite gaming gal, Amy Rose, she's going to be turning 26. Nintendo will be turning 130, so shout out to both of them. So 130 years to Nintendo. Shout out to you. After getting into gaming history because of this documentary hosted by Tony Hawk, I began getting a lot of books about video game history, such as The Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen Kent. That was published. He kept wanting to publish this book time and time again, and finally he said in 2001, I just have to publish this thing. And it happened, right after Sega was announcing discontinuation of the Dreamcast. And so he was like, wow, I picked a very interesting time to publish this book. I bought some other books about video game history, and then by late 2004, I remember coming across the channel G4. I remember it was the video game channel, and that's what I call it as. It was the video game channel. Had a lot of really cool stuff, and then I'm watching some shows, and then I remember spring of 2005, I remember watching this one television series called Icons, and there was this one episode about the Legend of Zelda series, and I really just decided, I'm not much into Zelda, I'm not good at it, but I just decided, why not, let's watch it, and I was just, blown away, and Icons became my number one favorite show on G4, and talks a lot of various aspects about, of video game history, it ran for 5 seasons, all but the 5th season, talked about, various moments, people, systems, games in video game history. They were talking, they had episodes about Atari, they had one about the NES. I remember seeing the episode about Gran Turismo. That was like, wow. I had no idea what Gran Turismo was until I saw this episode, and that was a very interesting, and that's what inspired me to get involved with the Gran Turismo series. That's actually why I chose PlayStation over Xbox, because of just the historical aspect of it, I guess. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I went with PlayStation. They did have an episode about the crash of 83 to 85. But as some of you can probably imagine, many of my favorite episodes of Icons are Sega related. They didn't have an episode about Sonic. I read somewhere that they were supposed to, but it just never came to pass. But the closest that we got to an episode about Sonic was about the man behind him, Yuji Naka. And I think that's how I found out about the SG-1000 game, Girls Garden. And so for me to have that game, that's a really nice piece of Sonic history there. I may do a let's play of that game sometime. I really plan to. I'm probably going to bring my Mark III up and put Girls Garden in it. Just hook it up to my TV upstairs and play a little bit and show how to play it. So it's a very difficult game, I'll say that. They also had an episode about the Dreamcast as well, and that was kind of certainly a sadder episode especially for Sega enthusiasts such as myself. But that became like my most favorite show on G4, and eventually a few years ago, G4 shifted focus from video games into things that people in their 20s and 30s like. Well, there's a problem with that, guys. There are a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, such as myself, who love gaming. I mean, there are a lot of retro gaming enthusiasts out there, such as myself, and that just basically, their change in focus was the downfall of G4. The last hurrah that G4 had was 2013, when they had the top 100 video games of all time. Whereas a lot of Mario games made that list, only one Sonic game made the list. That was the first game in the series. That was number 50 on the list, in case you're wondering. As for the first game of the Super Mario Brothers series, not Mario Brothers from 1983, but Super Mario Brothers from 1985, that was number 1 on the list. So, but it's nice to know that Sonic at least made the list. In fact, it was nice to know that he made the top 50. But then I remember in late 2011, I was looking for some stuff about the lawsuit between Universal and Nintendo. Universal was suing Nintendo over Donkey Kong, saying that it violated the rights to King Kong, and I wanted to know a little bit more about it. And I wanted to see if there was any footage of a guy from Nintendo bringing in the arcade machine, because, that actually happened. I don't know if there was any footage of it. Probably not, but I just wanted to see if there was. And that's how I stumbled across The Gaming Historian. He had an episode about this very lawsuit, and it was the first the first episode of The Gaming Historian that I ever watched, and today I support him on Patreon. Norm, if you're watching this, I am one of your supporters. Keep the good work up. You have some fantastic videos, and he's pretty much the guy I go to whenever I want to learn something new about gaming history. He's the guy I go to, and what I like about Norm is that he really does a really good job. He does a ton of research. He has a lot of books about gaming history. The books about gaming history that he has, the number of books it just probably dwarfs the number of books that I have. But he puts all this research, and then he makes a video, and then he explains it in our language, and that's what I really like about his style of presentation. He speaks to it in a way that everyone watching would understand, and that's what really helps. And another nice aspect is that he doesn't just talk about the stuff that Icons did, and I actually have his, and I showed you back in 2017, I do have his Blu-ray, and I was watching some of the extra features on it, and he was talking about how this episode came to be, and he was watching, and it turns out he was watching Icons on G4, and that I was watching that, and I was like, Norm, oh man, you watched Icons as well? So did I. Oh man, I love that. I love that show. I miss it. It was good. It was awesome. So, but instead of talking about the stuff that Icons talks about a lot of the stuff that many gaming enthusiasts probably already know about. He's the one who likes to delve deeper and talk about stuff that not everyone has heard of. He's made some not surprisingly, again, a lot of his episodes are about, my favorite episodes from him are, Sega related. He talked about the JVC XI, which I have. He talked about this one toy from Sega called Pods. That was really something. It's not really something I'm planning on getting. I did see the review, and it's just like, why even bother? He does have an episode, a 4-part about Sonic. He has a episode about the Dreamcast. It'd be really nice, Norm, if you could talk to us about about how Isawakawa saved Sega from a very uncertain future. That would be nice. That'd be something that's like the #1 episode request for me. But he's talked a whole bunch of stuff about, some Sega stuff. He did an episode about the Nintendo 64 disk drive. He talked about, he talked about a whole bunch of stuff that, I probably wouldn't have known without him. So he was just great. And so Norm, if you're watching this, thanks for telling me all you know about these amazing aspects of video game history, and I ask that you please keep the fantastic work up. I continue supporting you on Patreon. I plan to keep that going. I plan to keep that support going. So keep it up, bud. You've been doing wonderful. So that's he's pretty much the guy I go to these days whenever I want to learn a new tidbit of video game history, because it's like the more that I know, the more that I want to know. I always like really going into that detail and just finding out more and more and more. It's just an insatiable thirst, and it can never be quenched. But I think that's the beauty of it. I'm probably not going to know everything about video game history, but that's not going to stop me from trying. It's not going to. It's almost kind of like a high, and it really is. You just can't stop. You just got to keep going. But it's a very interesting high. I'll say that. So I plan to keep that going. But in the meantime, this is German Name 1990 speaking. I thank you very, very, very much for watching. And I hope to see you guys again soon later this year. Bye.